Hey guys, Jordan here. In this video I'm going to be talking about iPhone footage and is it usable for real estate photography. Let's get into it. Alright, so before I start, if you're new to my channel, I put out consistent real estate photography content like this. So if that's something you're into, make sure to subscribe to my channel. This video's inspiration comes from a comment I got from Masood Jamal. He says, I have on a video that I made that says, can you shoot real estate videos with an iPhone 13 Pro? I have iPhone 13 Pro Max, but it doesn't work good for interior jobs for real estate videography, specifically in low light conditions. And I would agree. I think this is something that you run into ever so often, where you have to shoot in a low light scenario where there's not a whole lot of light in the scene. And actually, I just did a quick test with my iPhone 13 Pro. I transferred the file here in my studio in a low light scenario, just so we can kind of look at the footage. But yeah, typically we're not, you're not shooting in ultra low light, but you can see you hit here, you can see that the camera's pushing the ISO limit pretty hard. Now, I will say this is on the ultra wide lens. I'm not exactly sure what the aperture rating is for it, but it's not as good as the standard camera. The standard camera has a pretty wide aperture setting, so it's going to be less noisy. But this is the lens that you'd likely be using if you're shooting real estate videos, which is the ultra wide. So yeah, there definitely is some noise moving around in here. If you look at it from just a quick perspective, it's not that bad. But yeah, over here where it gets really dark, it starts to get kind of shaky with some of that noise showing through. Now there are things that you can do in software to help reduce the visibility of the noise, but yeah, I mean, honestly, it's noisy, but how low light it is, I would say it's more usable than some cameras on the market for sure. So anyways, that is the example of the video clip, but I figured that some of you guys might want to actually look at some of the low light photos as well. So I loaded up a couple here, and let me move this screen up here in Lightroom. So now let me go in here. So I did two photos. This one is just if you are going to shoot photos with your iPhone, make sure you set it to RAW. And also something that you need to consider, because actually I had a problem with the camera a couple weeks ago, and I had to shoot some photos with the iPhone, and I was surprised by how good the results were. But you'll notice that the aspect ratio, this is the default for real estate photography and for cameras in general. Typically it's 2:3. You can see that's not the aspect ratio out of the iPhone. So one, crop it, and then also change your settings to be able to enable RAW. Make sure you're shooting RAW, because you're gonna have a lot more detail in the shadows and the highlights. Now yeah, now this picture right here is in low light, but it didn't use that long exposure. The second picture, it did use the long exposure, so I wanted to see what the difference really was in the amount of noise, which is really what you're mostly concerned about, is the noise level. So we already have shadows pushed to 63. I mean, if it matters or not, you can tell. Let me turn down highlights. I'm just trying to push the boundaries of the image. Which one is actually gives you more information? They definitely look different. One that uses the long exposure, you can see how it looks all blown out in the lights, and the one that didn't. Obviously, I think it has something to do with the light metering and how the exposure, because I was on here. But anyways, they look pretty muddy, honestly. I would say, let's see, it's hard to tell which one is worse. They're both, I mean, ideally, anything with a really small sensor is going to have image noise. I think this could potentially be usable, in a dire scenario where your camera's not working. But in general, this is pretty unreal. Like, usually you're not shooting dark images. Yeah, it just looks very flat. So anyways, I just wanted to show a little bit of photos and the video as well. But you know, with real estate photography, low light is something that you don't deal with all that often. I would probably say 80% of the shoots and pictures and videos, maybe even higher than that, are shot with a good amount of light. So it's not something that you have to worry about so much. And I will tell you, from a regular daylight or a normal shooting scenario for real estate photography, you can get some really good results with the iPhone. And maybe I'll do another shoot. If that's something you guys want to see, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure to make that video at some point in time in the near future. So anyways, let me make sure I answer the question. Yeah, so low light, definitely, you know, anything with the smaller sensor is going to have to be pushing ISO higher, because less light, you know, smaller sensor, less light hitting the sensor. But for how small the sensor is in the iPhone, I think it does perform pretty well, especially compared to other cameras with bigger sensors. For sure, for something that small, it does a pretty dang good job. So anyways, that's it for this video. If you got value, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys on the next one.